Ichimon Japan is made possible by Patreon support. If you would like to make sure that we can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to JapanKyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month.
So this will be the last podcast ever, because now we're going into the water business.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're selling eruption water. Tony and Ryan's eruption water. Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony.
And I'm Ryan.
And, well, let's just get right into it. It's just the two of us today. So Ichimon means one question. And every episode, we ask one question about Japan. Today's question is, how do you say trombone in Japanese?
I gotta say, I've been wondering this for at least a decade.
It's like, when you get into Japanese 1, everybody, raises their hand and says, Sensei, how do you say trombone in Japanese? And then Sensei always says, I'll tell you when you're ready.
Yeah, you're not ready yet.
Yeah. Well,
you have to be like a fourth Dan Japanese speaker before you can learn that word.
Exactly.
But here we are, going to leak it out to you now.
Yeah.
The word they don't want you to know.
The Ichimon Japan listeners are ready to know, I think.
Japanese teachers hate us.
Yeah. The word they don't want you to know. So, okay. Yeah, this is another one of those where I ask a super specific question, but in reality, I just want to talk about a bunch of other loosely related things.
Which is every episode, let's be honest.
It kind of is, yeah. It's at least 50%. Sometimes we do it, I don't know, it kind of makes more sense. But anyway, so just a little bit of background. So, a Japanese friend on social media posted recently, and I heard this story. It was like, I just learned that there's this Japanese word for trombone, and then she put it there, and it was a really funny word to me, and I think to most Japanese people that had never heard it before would probably think it's funny. And so then that led me to think about that and do a little bit more research on that. And I had already heard some loosely related things to this. So today, basically, we're going to talk about the Japanese writing system, a lot of katakana stuff, and then in the second half of the episode, we're going to reveal how you say trombone in Japanese. All right? So let's just start by discussing the Japanese writing system, because I mean, most people would think like, oh, you just say trombone in katakana, in one of the ways that you write Japanese, right? Trombone, right? Okay, sure, maybe you can say that. But
to be fair, yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's that's how you normally would say it, yes. But there's this other super obscure way, which again, second half of the episode. But Ryan, so how does the Japanese writing system work?
I don't want to give like personal opinion, but like it's kind of a mess.
Well, it is, but I mean, it's a mess in its own way, just like the English writing system is a mess in its own way.
So it is a combination of hiragana, katakana, kanji, romaji, and numbers. So it's 5 different things all shoved together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work very well among those.
It's like, how can I put it? When you get used to it, it's like, all right, yeah, like it makes sense. But
yes, it takes time to get to that point, though, I think.
Yeah. But it is when you just look at it from, especially when you're first starting out, it's like needlessly complicated, right?
Yeah, and like the only ones that work well is the hiragana, because it was actually made in Japan. I mean, katakana was also made in Japan, but it was specifically made for foreign words. And okay, so literally it was designed to express foreign words, and it's very bad at that job. So often the words don't sound anything like the words it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
The kanji, of course, were borrowed from Chinese, but Japanese, surprise, is not Chinese. So it ended up where every kanji in Japanese has at least 3 to 4 different possible readings.
Yeah.
Usually 2 are common, but sometimes you can get up to like 5, 6 plus different readings depending on the context.
Yeah, and there's plenty of like super obscure meaning, like readings as well.
And there's also some that are just like names only that don't even have a meaning.
Yep.
To the extent that sometimes native Japanese people also can't read it, like if it's the name of a station or like a neighborhood and they're not from the area.
Yep. Yeah. They have to either look it up, or a lot of times when it's super obscure, you'll get what's called the furigana, which is the hiragana on top so that you can read it with the syllabic alphabet, as they call it. But so that anybody can read. But if you don't have that, then you might be reading the name of the station wrong if it's some super obscure reading with some weird kanji that normally people wouldn't use.
Completely off topic, but can I do a funny kanji thing that is in Kansai area?
Sure.
Have you ever been to the area or the station Mozu? Usually it's Nakamozu.
I've heard of it. I can't remember if I've actually been there, but that does sound familiar.
So usually, like, at the minimum, one hiragana character equals one kanji. More often it's two, but like a minimum it's one.
Mm-hmm.
Mozu is three kanji, but it's just mozu. It only represents two hiragana.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
So yeah, I think if you're not local, no one can read that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you would at least expect it to be three mora or three hiragana, right? Like,
I was even telling a Japanese person, like, "Oh, are you sure it's not mozu?" I'm like, "No, it's mozu."
It's like, where's the extra kanji? Like, how do you shoehorn that in? But so you have kanji, you have hiragana, you have katakana. Those are the main things. But then you can throw in romaji and the English or the Latin alphabet, I guess you would call it, whatever. But and the numbers as well. But mainly we're talking here about hiragana, kanji, and katakana. And so kanji came first, and then they took little pieces of these kanji to create the hiragana and the katakana, and then you ended up with these made in Japan things adapted from kanji, that those became like the syllables that make up the sound system of Japanese. And then katakana came to be best known as the one that is used for foreign words. But there are a lot of other uses for katakana. Like,
that is true. It is also almost all animals, and also just rare words that nobody wants to bother with the kanji.
Yeah. So if something has a really difficult kanji, especially if it's not in the Joyo kanji, which is the standard kanji that kids learn in school, in public school, then a lot of times people might write it in katakana or maybe hiragana in some cases. But like you said, animals. So if you're trying to, in the scientific sense, if you're writing inu, in the scientific sense, if you're, writing an academic paper, you would likely use the katakana. Same for any other animal, neko or whatever, cat, blah, blah, blah.
Even out of the scientific sense, if it's just like not a house animal, it's almost always katakana, I think.
Okay. So just in a more general sense, I guess.
I'm trying to think of a good example. Kirin has kanji, right? Just no one uses it?
Yeah, I think that's really one of those super rare ones.
Yeah. Even stuff like sasori.
Scorpion for anyone.
Yeah.
Doesn't know, but
like just not everyday animals often are in katakana.
Yeah, true. A lot of times, like
I think usagi
I think
like
most
70% of the time in katakana.
Yeah, true. You don't see the kanji for usagi that often. A lot of animals, yeah, they do have kanji, but a lot of times they're not commonly used because I guess maybe, I don't know, they're difficult or kind of annoying to write. Or
sometimes there's a reason though. At least I'm assuming this reason, but I think it's true. My city has bears, which are obviously a danger, so they have signs up like in the right season to like be careful of them, which is literally right now actually. And kuma is almost always in katakana. I assume so that small children who don't know the kanji can still recognize what the sign is warning them about.
Good point as well. Yeah. That does happen too, definitely. So yeah, there are various uses. For example, one use is like in onomatopoeia in Japanese. A lot of times you'll see them written in katakana. That's just how it is. I don't know.
I don't think I've ever seen kanji onomatopoeia.
That's true. Yeah, that's pretty rare. I'm probably some do because there's always exceptions, but
it's
for the most part,
JoJo.
Probably JoJo. Yeah, go back and listen to our onomatopoeia episode. That was a really fun one.
I guarantee at some point, like a Chinese character enters this story, and instead of like having the go in katakana, it's a go in kanji.
Very well. It could be. Don't ever assume anything with JoJo. JoJo, no rules. Yeah, so you have onomatopoeia, you have also like kind of slangy language, maybe like for emphasis. A lot of times like gyaru, go back to our gyaru episode, they use a lot of katakana, kind of like breaking from the norm, like I don't know, kanji has this kind of like sometimes in some cases you might come off like you're trying to look smart or something, right? Like really academic maybe. But in order to kind of rebel against that, then maybe some, younger people might say like, oh, I'm going to use katakana to look more kind of fun and I don't know, like young and funky or something. So that certainly happens as well. And then you also have like for example, in manga, like if you get a foreign character, sometimes, they might, be shown speaking in katakana, in order to perhaps emphasize, that they have an accent or there's something going on there with like unnatural, unnative Japanese. So that does happen sometimes.
Additionally, robots speak in katakana. So when I read manga, I assume robots and foreigners speak exactly the same.
Yeah, that does happen too. Yeah, you do get robots who speak in katakana. So maybe either either robots are sounding like konnichiwa.
I hope it's that way actually now.
All robots sound like bad foreign stereotypes.
Which is funny because like Japanese people are programming them that way.
Yeah. That's some sort of like really strange like racist thing going on. It's like, let's make all robots sound like bad foreign accents. But no, that's not it. I mean, it's more complicated than that. And, when you really get into quantitative analysis and all that, you can come up with all sorts of, little specific examples. But the point is that a lot of times, katakana is being used to kind of indicate that something that is a little bit different from the norm of what you might expect like a natural speaker to sound like.
It's definitely more of it doesn't sound normal because it's even like Japanese characters, like if it's a kid or someone who just doesn't recognize a complicated word, like if something is said to them in kanji, they'll repeat it back in katakana, which is supposed to imply like they're sounding it out or something.
Yeah, that happens too. So yeah, it's complicated. It's not just like foreign equals, katakana, but that does happen too. So, but yeah, there's all sorts of little like, different uses for katakana here and there. But of course, most people know it as katakana is the one that you write all the foreign words with. But, there are kind of, in a way, exceptions to that general rule in that not all foreign words are written in every single situation in katakana. And of course, the first big thing that we can say is like, well, a whole lot of Japanese actually came from Chinese and they're using kanji. So
yeah, I mean, like, I think 80% of Japanese came from foreign words then.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it that way, exactly. I mean, yes, there was the native Japanese language and all that, but oh my God, do they have like a ton of like kanji compound words that originally came from, Chinese and that mimic, sometimes not so accurately, but nevertheless mimic or sound like the original Chinese that the word comes from. So yeah, those are tons of foreign words that don't use katakana. So first huge example, but, there's also a very specific type of word that you could say they kind of got, in a way, like they're Western origin words that got kind of grandfathered into the Japanese language in a way, in that like they entered into Japan like long enough ago that they got kanji because I don't know, because they're very old is the simplest explanation. But for example, like one really well-known one is kohi. Right. And, I mean, normally, these days, in the vast majority of cases, you do see ko, the elongation, the little, line, hi, and then the little elongation, in katakana, ko, o, hi, i, right? But sometimes you do see kohi written in kanji. And I think usually like you might see it at like, let's say, an old fashioned, maybe like cafe or maybe like a fancy vending machine. It's trying to kind of look kind of classy or something. I don't know. They're like, it's kind of like trying to look a little bit fancy or old fashioned in some way. So they slap on the kanji. So I looked into this and it seems that the kanji was given to coffee or kohi, back in the, was it like late 1800s?
I don't know
by
why, but I just like saying given. Like, here you go, coffee. You've earned this.
you got a kanji. There you go. Good job. So this kanji is not commonly used. Like these are not. I'm pretty sure they're not part of the Joyo kanji. The this 1900-ish kanji that everybody knows. But this was back in like late 1800s. This guy was it Yamaguchi Yohan was his name, right? No, it wasn't Yamaguchi. I'm sorry, I'm confusing it with somebody else. It was so. Let me do that again. So this guy's name was Utagawa Yohan. And this guy was Rangakusha, which is Rangaku is basically it's like Western studies, but Rangaku, a more literal translation would be like Dutch studies, because the Dutch were getting access to Japan via trading, even during times when other foreigners were not allowed to get into the country, and so a lot of Western knowledge made its way into Japan through the Dutch, and so I guess they just ended up calling all this Western stuff like Rangaku. And so this guy was basically a scholar of Western things, science and etc., just any kind of random stuff that came his way from the West. And so he decided to, I guess, give the kanji of this, the for coffee to coffee, because according to what I read, which was according to the article discovered by like a website associated with UCC, a Japanese coffee company. So, kind of a roundabout thing, but it goes back to UCC. So I guess they're trustworthy. But this guy, Utagawa Yohan, decided that the coffee bean resembled like a kanzashi and these like women's hair ornaments. And so the ko and the hi in these two kanji, that they refer to these hair items. And so I guess they also maybe kind of sounded like kohi. And so he thought these were good kanji for coffee. And so it stuck. But apparently, so Ryan thought, like, what about Chinese? And so they're similar, but not exactly the same in Chinese. Right?
Yeah, almost exactly the same. It might just be, I don't know Chinese very well, but I think the radical is different, and it might just be because the change from traditional to, what's the non-traditional one called? Simplified.
Simplified, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe this Utagawa guy, maybe, he is trying to pass it off as him coming up with by himself, but he actually just took a look at the Chinese, or no, but you found out that actually China took the kanji from Japan. It looks as if this guy
Japan.
I said that weird.
Yeah, Japan. This guy actually did make it. Chinese didn't know what to call it, so they kind of borrowed his thing, and then it ended up becoming what China uses. So, which is actually kind of an interesting story, right? Kanji came from China to Japan, and then more recently, Japan gave some kanji back.
Yeah.
At least one.
Far fewer, but they gave a little something back. So interesting little story there with coffee. It's like, I guess that's why the kanji are almost the same. Maybe, like you said, after kanji was simplified, in China, maybe that's why you get the slight difference. But originally, it seems like they were using whatever kanji he had proposed. So,
or maybe cool. There's some Chinese scholar who's like, if I just modify it slightly, I can take credit for it.
Could be. Oh my goodness, we didn't check the Chinese Wikipedia entry on this. Maybe that one has a different story. So yeah. But another interesting thing is that this Utagawa guy also came up with the Japanese, quote unquote, or the Japanese kanji words for a lot of other words in science, such as oxygen, sanso, nitrogen, shiso, cells, saibo, and a bunch of other ones. So this guy seems to have been quite prolific, and these words are still used in Japanese to this day, and the same kanji are still used to this day. They're very normal words. They don't sound weird or anything. So this guy, I don't know, even though coffee is only used in very special situations, a lot of other terms that he coined are still used. So hey, great for him. So another thing here that I just thought of, and this is really not particularly educational, but I just thought just some random thing here that I thought was interesting, and these are how these episodes work. Sometimes I just throw in these random things, but do you remember, Ryan, the code that you see in the Matrix?
No.
How it You don't, but you did see The Matrix, right?
I saw The Matrix exactly once in junior high.
Yeah. Okay. So
I
over
remember.
20
Okay,
years
it's
ago.
like weird little symbols floating green in a black background.
Yes. Now there are katakana in those symbols.
Oh, are there?
Yeah. There's a lot of katakana there. It's probably numbers and katakana. I don't think it's
so
purely
cliche that
katakana.
there's like Asia's cool. Stick this in.
Yeah. Well, at least they did it in the 90s back, when it was still a bit less like overdone, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, so they threw in the katakana. What was interesting about that was I was reading an article that katakana came from the text of a recipe for sushi, apparently. So it's just random like sushi ingredients and stuff, I guess.
Like, what is a sushi recipe? Take fish, take rice, you're done.
I guess so. It's like
Put
cut
fish on
the
top.
tuna.
Don't put
cut
fish
the
on
tuna.
bottom, put fish on top.
When complete, check if fish is on bottom or on top.
You
If
may
it is on
add show
bottom,
you.
turn it over. But yeah, apparently like the effects guy or whatever that did the scrolling like code text, I guess his wife was Japanese and she had like some magazine with like recipes in it, and so that he took it and then they translated all that into katakana, and then just threw the text in, and I guess
So he actually put
Wachowski's
work
liked it.
into this. He didn't just like copy paste something.
No, yeah. I think they actually like wrote it out like after they transliterated is that the right word, into katakana. Then they actually like wrote it. They might have even handwritten. I'm not totally sure on that, but yeah, it wasn't just copy paste.
So you guys should try out this sushi recipe. Remember, fish goes on top.
Yeah, fish goes on top. Yes. So that's another use for katakana. Trying to make something look Japanesey. So there you go.
Now I want to imagine there was like in the past there was this great sushi battle between another rival kitchen that was like, no, fish goes on bottom.
It's possible. Is it? Oh man, I can't remember. But there's a style of sushi called, I believe it's called oshizushi, if I remember correctly, which is particularly well associated with Osaka, and it's kind of like in this little like boxish sort of thing, and I think the fish might be on the bottom, if I remember correctly.
I will literally go to a sushi place just if the fish is on the bottom, just to see it.
I may be misremembering that, but man, it's been a long time since I've had it. So, well, if anybody out there is curious, go check out. I believe it's called oshizushi, but
there's an alternate universe where the sushi's always on the bottom, or the fish is always on the bottom.
Yeah, that's the bizarro world. Oh geez, and I should have mentioned this before I went to the Matrix thing, but there are other also foreign origin words that do have kanji. There's actually a lot of them, and this whole phenomenon is called ateji.
I mean tempura.
Like tempura, yeah. There's tons of them, right? Where ateji is basically just trying to find kanji that either somehow match the meaning or the reading kind of sounds similar to the reading you're trying to get with this foreign word.
I like to argue Japanese people that literally all kanji is ateji.
Well, it basically is.
They don't perceive of it that way, but it is.
I mean,
it's just the age that's the only difference.
That's totally true. Yeah, I was gonna say, well, what about the kanji that the Japanese came up with? But even that's kind of debatable. I mean, I guess if they came up with it originally, like there is a few, that they do. So, I guess that's not ateji.
Okay, so maybe there's like 10.
Yeah, because we talked about that in the kanji episode with Christine, where, for example, we were talking about like how they came up with like, for example, was it like decimeters, and it was like 10, the kanji for 10 and the kanji for rice, and that's a made in Japan kanji, but it uses kanji that already existed. So
it's like a fun thing I do if I have a good relationship with a Japanese person, because I won't do it to a stranger. I have like a hanko that's in kanji for my name, and like, oh, you have ateji for your name, like so do you, and like, no, this one's different, like, no, it's not.
It's the same thing, yeah.
Literally, like, your parents thought I want to name you like Akari, and they looked for kanji that made that.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can even argue that with the last names. I mean,
yeah.
Like,
oh,
where's the Moriguchis in China? It's like
explain to me how it's different.
Very good point. Yeah. So yeah, language is messy, and it's what people kind of make up on the spot, and then
it's. I guess the interesting thing, or possibly frustrating thing, is it's not what the origin or history of things is; it's how people perceive of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And then eventually, enough people perceive it a certain way that they all go like, it's like, oh, but this isn't ateji. It's like, no, you took kanji and you made it your own. I mean, in the broadest definition, yes, it is ateji. So yeah. But yeah, what I was gonna say is that there are some other like really old words as well. So just like we were talking about coffee that do have these interesting kanji. For example, tabako is another really well-known one. And tabako sounds like tobacco, but typically tabako would be referring to cigarettes specifically, not like the tobacco plant.
That one I think is even more commonly in katakana only.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one is more, but these are one of the first ones that you usually tend to notice, and you go like, wait, but isn't this a foreign word, and isn't it supposed to be in katakana? And then your teacher says, but it's an old one, so it's an exception.
I'm just kind of thinking, because like I feel like there's been a slight surge of the kanji kohis, just for like trendy cafe places.
Yeah.
Outside of like a textbook, I don't think I've ever seen tabako and kanji, because it's like written on like konbinis and like vending machines, and it's always katakana.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I think anybody that would write it in kanji would be choosing to do it on purpose. Again, probably if they're, I can imagine it at like some super boutique, like tobacco kind of smoke shop.
Another thing I just kind of thought of is a word like kusuri, where if you use the kanji, you probably mean medicine, but if you use katakana, you might mean drugs.
Very interesting. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So another quirky way that these things work. But yeah, the kanji for tobacco is it's a kanji that can mean like weed, or I guess in a broader sense maybe even like plant, but it's not shoku. It's a different kanji. But and then also smoke. So weed smoke, something like that would be
It sounds more like a drug.
Yeah, it sounds more like kusuri katakana, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that was back in the day. I guess they decided that maybe even like as early as like very early Edo, or maybe even before Edo, like back when they were trading with like the Portuguese and stuff. So I'm not sure exactly when that was created. But there's also other words like garasu, which is glass, and I think there's another one, kurabu. These are all very like ateji. They just kind of took kanji that sounded kind of like the syllables there, and so they just slapped it on.
Yeah, they're really liberal, because like I'm looking at the kurabu, that is like, that is always daku, but they're just like ignoring that.
Yeah. But I guess you could, like, a kurabu is, I'm not even sure what the heck were they using this kurabu, if this was a word that they came up, that they first heard in like 1600s or 1700s, or I don't know when the heck they first heard it, but I don't know what exactly this kurabu would be referring to, but it exists. That's what it is. So I don't know, but there's tons of these. So I'm not going to go one by one, but it's pretty interesting just to see what kanji are used, and sometimes they're really old words, sometimes they're not, and sometimes like kohi, it's a little bit newer, like in the late 1800s. All right, so there's so much more we could say about katakana and hiragana and all this stuff, but I mean, yeah, let's take a quick break, and then we'll start talking about the trombone related stuff. All right. Hey, it's commercial time. All right, so just a reminder, I do another podcast about Japan. It's called Japan Station. Go check it out. There are more episodes over there. I am releasing 2 episodes a month of that one. I'm doing my best to stick to that schedule, which has been, I am very busy with work right now and a few other things, so it's kind of tricky to keep this all up, but I'm doing my best. So the latest episode is an interview with Sakura Stardust, or Alex from the Sakura Stardust YouTube channel. She does content about Japanese lost media. It's a really fun episode. Go check it out. JapanStationPodcast.com, or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, JapanKyo Docs, the YouTube channel that we launched a few months ago, continues to grow. We've got, I think, 200 subscribers or more. The videos keep getting new views, so thank you so much to everybody checking those out. We do have 2 videos, I believe. They are filmed. It's just that they need to be edited, and these are complex videos. So they take quite a bit of time. And the thing is also that Kyle, who from Tokyo Explosion podcast, I think some of you might know him, love working with him, just super talented guy. But right now, he is in the process of moving and selling his old place and relocating, and him and his wife are starting a new business. So there's been a bit of a delay with the next episode and the last video as well. So those are coming. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel JapanKyo Docs so you don't miss those when they come out. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Twitter so you don't miss out on anything at JapanKyo News. And don't forget to subscribe to this show, Ichimon Japan, if you enjoy it. We're releasing one episode a month on the 7th of every month. Easy to forget, so it's best that you just subscribe. Go do that. Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so let's get back into the rest of the episode. Let's get to the trombone related stuff. So this whole trombone thing dates back to World War II as far as I understand. All right. So after digging a little bit deeper into this, it seems like all these words that I'm going to discuss, not all of them, but they all have a close link to World War II. So basically what happened is that in World War II, of course, Japan was fighting with the Allies, of which the U.S. and the U.K. were a part of.
I'm going to quickly point out, also fighting against China.
Yeah, definitely, yes. And they didn't do anything with kanji. So
that's what I was going to point out.
Yeah. Again, it's like, no, kanji's ours now. It's okay. It's like, but I mean, to be very practical, it's like if they tried to get rid of kanji, oh my goodness, that would be like.
To get to the point, if you don't mind, like where we're going is they made an effort to stop using English-based words because they thought it was the words of the enemy. But they didn't make an effort to stop using Chinese-based words, despite China also being their enemy.
Yeah.
So if I had been a Japanese person at that time, I totally would have been executed because I'm like, hey guys, stop using kanji too then, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and for that matter, actually, hiragana and katakana were kind of, they kind of come from kanji anyway. So
yeah, we just no written language in Japan anymore.
It's like, just, let's just communicate with telepathy, and I think we'll all be good. Yeah, we'll just like transfer emotions to each other. So yes, that. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too political, but like the problem with nationalism is they always try to just like take credit for things they didn't do, and then I don't know. There's no logic behind it.
It's not. Yeah, there's absolutely no logic to it. Exactly.
This English language we're borrowing is bad, but that Chinese language we're borrowing, that one's okay. It's part of our identity now, just because we feel like it.
Yeah. And these words that we're speaking, actually derived from Chinese anyway. So, I mean, some of them, right? The ones that come from the kanji compounds. But
yeah, it's spoken, it's only like 50%, I think I heard. But like written, it's like over 80, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, hypocrisy, nationalism. I mean, nothing new. We all know that. But so yes, like Ryan said, thank you for explaining that because I was kind of burying the lead there. But the point here is that it was never, it seems, as far as I understand and from what I read, it was never like some national law that Japan like enacted that said like, we're not going to use katakana anymore, get rid of all English, because that doesn't seem to have happened.
It was a Freedom Prize thing.
Freedom Prize, geez. I wonder how many people remember that from our listeners. But anyway, so yeah, it seems like it was like a social movement. There were certain people that were kind of pushing things like, hey, you shouldn't be using katakana. And maybe some people like in the government, they were kind of like, peer pressuring people to do this. But even despite these kind of social pressures that were going on at the time, there were still companies that had katakana names. And for example, there was like one news channel or something, I forgot what it was called, but they still had news in the name all through the war. And of course, Japan was very controlling about the media and all that. They had a censorship bureau and all that. So, that tells you that it wasn't like, they had to get rid of absolutely everything. It wasn't like a whole national effort, but there was a lot of kind of peer pressure and social pressure, and some people that were very pushy and very aggressive about this. And so, there was this kind of push to use less katakana. And sometimes people did it because they really believed in the cause, and sometimes people did it because they just wanted to avoid the trouble, and they kind of did it preemptively. So
there had to at least be one rebellious dude who's like cutting kanji out of whatever work he was doing too.
And putting in katakana on purpose?
No, just like to prove a point of like how absurd this is. Like,
yeah, it's like, well, if you want me to get rid of katakana, I'm going to get rid of the
like
kanji
some
too.
like very extreme school teacher or something. One of the people who would have been like anti-war is like, okay, well, I guess we're not teaching any of this then. Okay, students, we can learn, like, here's your dictionary, tear out 80% of the pages. These are the words we're allowed to use.
It wouldn't surprise. I mean, there could have been certainly one person. So
no more karita, no more tempura, no more.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you start to get into, we're going to get into food. So hang on, I before we get into food, but one of the most interesting areas in which this kind of movement, this pressure to get rid of katakana shows up is in baseball. So baseball in Japanese is called yakyu. Now you can say baseball, but I mean, even in Japan these days, you tend to hear yakyu more often, I think.
I mentioned this to you earlier, but I'll say it for the recording. I definitely, I think it's yakyu 98% of the time, but I feel like there has been a very slight increase in baseball. So the example I said to you earlier is there was a program this summer at my school. We had a poster up like in the entrance room that said baseball camp. So kids could like go practice baseball in the summer. I remember I was walking by and I actually like stopped in place to look and was like, wow, it says baseball, not yakyu.
Yeah, that would catch my attention too. Yeah, because exactly. I mean, I think yakyu is what you hear almost all the time.
Yeah.
I wonder. I would love to ask the person that did that. Like, any reasons for why you went with baseball instead?
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah,
it does exist like for Japanese audiences sometimes.
Definitely, no. That's a good example of the fact that yes, it is used every once in a while. It does exist, and people do understand it. So, but yeah, yakyu is the common way. Anyway, so in World War II, baseball has been popular for a long time in Japan, and even during World War II, people still love baseball. But there was this push to start using kanji or / Japanese in quotation marks here words for like these words that are used in baseball. So, for example, a batter would be called a dasha, and da comes from utsu, which is to hit, right? It's just a different meaning of the kanji.
Guy.
So, hit guy, yeah. I mean, you could translate it as a hitter, which we do say in English. I guess I'm pretty sure people do say that. But yeah, batter.
You could call it a hitman.
A hitman. That's true. Yeah. That is possible. Yes, if
I
we
really
translate
hope
it loosely.
Somewhere at the time, like some batter was talking with some other like international person. He translates directly. He's like, "Oh yeah, back in my hometown, I'm a hitman." And they're like, "Wait, what?"
And then there were plenty. There's all kinds of like baseball positions. Another one that I saw was a sosha, which literally is like running person, I guess you would say. I think this refers to a person that is running around the bases. Like the English that I saw was base runner. I don't know if that's like natural or not. I don't know. It sounds weird to me, but again, I think it's just a person after they hit the ball and then they're running, then they would be called the runner, perhaps. So a sosha. And
as opposed to people who hit the ball and just go back to the bench.
They're called sitters.
Japanese baseball is weird. Only half the team runs.
Yeah. And then there's so something that I read was that apparently a lot of these words were actually coined in 1890s around then. And I guess that's when baseball was first imported into Japan. And so, they tried to kind of just come up with all these original Japanese terms. But it seems that even though they had these terms, the katakana ones became really the popular ones. But then in World War II, there was a push to adopt some of these, or all of these old Japanese ways of saying these things. But of course, eventually they fell out of favor again, or I don't know even how how widespread they became. But nowadays, it's all katakana again. For the most part, every once in a while, I do think you do hear one of these, Japanese style ones. I'm pretty sure I have, but it's still much more common to hear for the most part the katakana ones. Another really interesting aspect of this whole baseball thing is that a lot of the teams, I didn't see a full list, but I have 3 examples. These teams change their names because, for example, very famous Japanese team, the Giants, right? The Tokyo, now they're known as the Yomiuri Giants. I think back in the day they were called the Tokyo Giants. And they of course that's katakana, right? So they changed their name to Kyojin, right? Which is the word for giants, right? So even nowadays you still do hear Kyojin. So it doesn't sound particularly weird to the ear these days. But then another one was the now we call them the Hanshin Tigers, the Osaka Kobe area baseball team. They changed their name from the Osaka Tigers to the Osaka Hanshin,
and then to the Hanshin Tigers.
And then to the Hanshin Tigers, yeah.
So if things go back, they'll become the Hanshin Hanshin.
Or the Tigers Osaka.
Tigers Osaka? We're the Osakas. We're from Tiger.
Yeah, we're the Osakas. No, but this was really interesting to me in that I know that nowadays the Hanshin refers, it's kind of a double, right? Well, yeah, so I think in reality it refers to a train line, which also has a department store chain, the Hanshin department store and railway. But Hanshin also happens to be the same like kanji compound that refers to Osaka and Kobe. So it's a nice coincidence. And I suspect that this was the case back in the day as well, that it went back when they changed their name to the Osaka Hanshin. It was probably in reference to also I suspect, I don't know this, but to the railway. But the thing that happens here though is that you end up with the name of the Osaka Hanshin, which it's almost like saying, they're both
the
Tokyo
places.
Kantos.
Yeah, so
yeah, they're both
the Los Angeles Californias or something.
Yeah.
We're the Californians. We play for Los Angeles. Like, okay,
yeah,
you're from a smaller area, but your name is the bigger area.
Yeah, and
or just like the New York Americas.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so again, I think the Hanshin is probably referring to the railway, but because it's the same exact word and same exact kanji, you can interpret it that way, which to me just sounds funny, right? It's like an area and an area. But another example of this name change was this baseball team that doesn't exist anymore. But they went by the name of the Tokyo Senators, and it was katakana Senators, I think. And they changed their name to the Tsubasa, which means wings.
How did they become the Senators in the first place? Is that what they used to call like the Diet members, or
I don't know that. And like it's really strange because like. Like they like the Gin, but I've heard, isn't there a baseball team somewhere that is like the Senators or something like that? Maybe. You know what it was?
West?
No. Yeah, you know what it was? It was probably.
Team, isn't it?
I can't remember.
Cut this out if I'm wrong.
Yeah. No. So you know what it probably was is that these old baseball teams in Japan.
Okay, I was right.
Okay, so. Well, what happened was that a lot of these old baseball teams, if not all of them, they just copied their names from popular teams in the U.S. So there was a Tigers team in the U.S. There was a Giants, and there still is. And I'm pretty sure there was a Senators as well. So they probably just copied the name, and so it's this weird thing. Is like, well, are there really Senators in Japan? It's like,
I mean, yes, but they don't call them that.
Yeah, they don't call it exactly. So I don't know. It's just they probably just copied it. And
in case you didn't know, people, Japan is in fact a representative democracy.
Yes.
And just like the rest of the world, I won't get political.
So, so they probably just copied the name, and then they ended up changing the name to Tsubasa. And then shortly after that, they ended up disbanding the team due to, I think they just weren't making money or something. They didn't have enough money. So that team doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that happened. And then eventually, I guess they changed the names again. And now you have all kinds of names like the Nippon Ham Fighters, no kanji, aside from Nippon, I guess, we got the Ham Fighters. I love that name.
Yeah, that's great. I was talking actually with someone yesterday about funny names, and that one came up.
Yeah. But, actually, it sounds really funny to us, but it's actually Nippon Ham is the company.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just funny because you say it all in one, so it sounds like you're talking about the ham fighters.
I mean, they're aware of that, right?
Yeah, I hope they are. But yeah, Nippon Ham is a very big, probably meat company. I doubt they make only ham. Okay, so there were a bunch of these words during World War II that I can only assume were coined during this time. Maybe there's a few exceptions, but I found a list of these words that were supposedly, I don't know, people tried to push these during World War II. And they are for words that already had katakana, that were super simple and that probably everybody understood, but they end up being these super long, like, descriptive things. So, for example, what's the first one that we have, Ryan?
So the first one is kare, so curry.
Yeah. So curry, I mean, it could refer to just the curry itself, or a lot of times people will just say kare to refer to the curry and the rice. So kare rice, they might just shorten it. But, and in this case specifically, we are talking about curry and rice. So this word that somebody, I don't know who it was or how, but this is such a long word. Okay. So it's karami iri shiru kake han.
Let's try to say that fast.
Karami iri shiru kake han.
Versus kare.
Kare, yeah, versus kare, yes. So, okay, so let's break this down. So, karami refers to, like, the spice. You could translate that as, like, spice, hot spice, or spice, or could even be, like, spicy, as in, like hot, like, how can I put it? Like hot sauce, spicy, kind of hot.
Which I gotta point out, in Japanese or in Japan, curry is not very hot.
Yeah, you have to have the Indian curry. And then iri means like inside, or that it has it. Shiru is like soup in a broad sense. Kake means to, like, usually like pour over or put on. Yeah. And then han comes from, han is like basically rice.
Yeah.
So like gohan, but without the go.
So spicy flavored, I don't know how to get the iri in there, because it's not
like containing
soup containing spicy flavor poured on rice.
Yeah, something like that.
See, instead of just saying kare, like, hey guys, you want to go out and get some soup containing spiciness poured on rice today?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you know what? I already had some rice with spicy containing soup poured on top of it last night. So I can only assume that at least a few people in Japan were saying things like that.
Yeah, some diehard is trying this. I bet like he even went to like a kare restaurant and there's like, honey?
Yeah, it's like, how dare you say kare? Oh, it's like, you got to support.
How dare you call
efforts.
this thing by its name?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of these. I only picked a few because we could spend all day on these. But what's the next one? Right?
Next one is koroke, which I love.
Oh, koroke. Oh my goodness, I love koroke. One of my favorite things.
I like it with curry sauce.
Oh yeah, there's some. Oh my goodness, if you try to that's a whole sentence right there.
Oh man,
combine these two.
You can combine the two.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, for anybody that doesn't know what a koroke is, that originally comes from croquette in French. But the Japanese koroke is basically like deep fry, like mashed down
like
potatoes.
mashed.
Usually has meat inside, and it's deep fried into this kind of flat, round, discish kind of shape. Typically, although there's other shapes as well. Sometimes they're more like balls, but
usually
typically it's like,
it's kind of the same shape as like those fast food hash browns.
Yeah. Like the
consistency is very different, but the shape is the same.
Yeah.
It's much better.
And I mean, it's still fried potato, and it has some meat in it, or sometimes like
you can have various
crab
things in
or whatever.
Like meat's like the main thing.
Yeah,
not a lot though. It's mostly potato.
Yeah, and it's absolutely delicious because I mean it's fried potato. It's like, if you don't like fried potato, then I guess you won't like koroke. But hey, so anyway, this forced Japanese World War II anti-katakana translation is abura age niku manju. Okay, so so abura is oil, age is usually like deep fried. Abura, so deep fried in oil.
So they even had to be redundant and say deep fried in oil as opposed to just like
yeah, exactly. And then manju is usually like a bun of some kind. So deep fried meat bun is the shortest translation I could come up with.
So
But
what happens
an
if you have a
interesting
fried nikuman? They're just the same word then.
Yeah, exactly. If you just another way that I saw it was just niku manju. I just saw without the abudage as well for korokke. So, which is confusing, at least to my modern ears, because when I hear niku manju, I would think nikuman, which is the pork buns that you get in Japan. Like a lot of times you get them at the convenience store, but of course, if you go to like a Chinese restaurant or something like that, you can get them there as well. So I don't know what they were calling nikuman back in those days. I mean, seems like it might be a little confusing. But going back to our combining curry and because you do get korokke curry, you would get what would you get? Abura age niku manju iri karami iri shiru kake han.
Kudasai.
Kudasai. Hitotsu kudasai. That's how people were ordering things, maybe. Super nationalist.
It'll help you with weight loss because no one wants to order all that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, do you want it with the aburaage niku manju or without the aburaage niku manju? All right. So what's another one of these?
Next one we have is saida.
Oh, saida. Ne. Okay, so saida, it's funshutsu mizu, I think, or maybe funshutsu sui, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is like eruption water.
I gotta say, I like that English name the best now.
Yeah. And I guess this cider is like the carbonated like apple juice. I mean, I know it's like fermented apple juice. Maybe it's referring to that. I don't know this because sometimes the when you hear cider these days, you think like Mitsuya cider, which is like the carbonated like apple flavored like soda that is sold in Japan. But this might be referring to the more traditional like cider, which is like fermented kind of apple like juice. I'm using the term very loosely because I know it's not actually juice, it's alcohol. I don't know if it's referring to the alcohol version.
I'm still just thinking we need to go into business and release a product called eruption water now.
Eruption water, yeah. I mean, if smart water got some traction, I think we can get eruption water going, like
who like smart water when you can have water that explodes.
Yeah. Eruption water. I mean, that's a sexy commercial. I can think of some good ways to market that.
So this will be the last podcast ever because now we're going into the water business.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're selling eruption water. Tony and Ryan's eruption water. All right.
Get erupted.
Yeah, we just pay Jay-Z to do a spot for us and we're in the money. All right. So what's after eruption water?
Ringo juice.
Ringo juice. Very simple. Ringo is apple juice.
Yeah.
Ringo juice. Yeah, still used today. People love apple juice. Why would you ever change that? Well, apparently some supranationalist people wanted to call it Ringo jiru, which sounds like very weird to the modern ear.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, it sounds like apple soup.
Yeah.
That's kind of or apple, like, I don't know, like I can't convey
technically is juice, but it's not used like that very much.
Yeah. Like to me, so jiru or shiru, like miso shiru, right?
Yeah.
Miso soup, or niku jiru, which is the meat juice that comes out, when you like bite into a nice juicy piece of meat and that kind of juice comes out. That's the niku jiru. So to me, like it like I get images of like the meat juice and that so that to me, like it that's why it sounds weird because normally you would not use shiru to describe like apple juice, but it's not incorrect. I mean, I think it's in a way perfectly acceptable. It's just to modern sensibilities, it doesn't quite sound right.
Due to it not catching on, I'm guessing back then it still had that kind of strange sound to it.
I suspect, yeah. Because juice is the kind of de facto, like
the juice doesn't mean juice though, because juice includes like soda.
Yes,
and
yes, basically soft beverages, right?
Yeah.
Soft drinks. Well,
depending on the person, I think even like I don't know. Never mind.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's
I think
very vague what is included and not included with juice.
Yeah, it can be apple juice, it can be soda, it can be Coke, blah blah blah.
It's like not water, not tea, I guess, and not alcohol.
Yeah, And not exactly. Yes. That's basically what it is. Okay, so yeah, so there. What? Here's another one, and this one is not
might be included.
Like maybe if it's
like the newer
something?
teas, not like the traditional like ocha kocha stuff, but like maybe boba tea stuff is included.
I would not be surprised.
I'm not positive. I just know it's a very
I've
vague
never heard
word.
it. Yeah, I've never heard it used that way, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
I just know sometimes my students say like juice no mitai, and it's like that basically means you want to drink
it's like
some kind of drink.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, we've got a whole lot of options. All right. So next up, we don't have any food ones anymore, but now we're going into the world of instruments, which of course there's plenty of katakana musical instrument names in Japanese to this day. But there were efforts by some people to not use the katakana anymore. So what do we have first up here?
First one we have is sax, which in Japanese is sakusu.
Sakusu,
modern J. So sakusu.
Yeah. So the sax in Japanese would be kinzokusei magari shakuhachi. Right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Kinzokusei magari shakuhachi. Okay.
So metal material bent shakuhachi.
Yes.
Shakuhachi is the name of a Japanese instrument. Though I'll point out, I'm pretty sure it's a flute, which a saxophone is not.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So,
and there is a Japanese word for flute with fue, but they didn't use that for some reason.
Yeah. Well,
I guess shakuhachi is stronger associated with Japan, so they wanted to like really nationalize this one.
True. Yeah. They wanted to go super right wing on this. Yeah. So yeah, it's again super literal. Like it's just describing exactly what it is, and I mean, just to be perfectly clear, I mean, when you break down I don't know what saxophone came from, what phone we have probably sound, and I don't know what the sax part came from, but some of these words, when you really break it down into their original, language of origin parts, they do have a similar sort of sound to them, but it's just that we've adapted them over the years, and
that original sound is kind of gone. Like when they tried to do this in Japanese, that sound was still there.
Very much. Yeah. There was no other nuance to this. There was no other like washed away.
You were literally just saying like, oh, do you play metal bent shakuhachi?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here's one of the ones that I really like. What's the next one, Ryan?
The next one is violin, which would be violin.
Yeah. Violin in Japanese, nice and simple. It's just the katakana, but no. Back in World War II, the preferred way to say this by some people was hyotangata ito kosuriki.
I love it.
Which
kosuri.
Yeah, I know kosuri. Yeah. Okay. So hyotan is a type of gourd. Gata is type or kata.
Or shape.
So hyotangata.
Yeah.
So I guess it's referring to the shape of the violin. It looks kind of like this kind of gourd. And then ito is string. Kosuri means like rubbing. And then key device. So gourd type rubbing device, string rubbing device.
It sounds like an instrument.
So yeah, this if you I don't know what they would have called what are those a Stradivarius? Yeah, who knows? Like, but if you happen to get a Stradivarius,
what's also interesting is the final kanji ki. Like the word for instrument is gakki, but they didn't use that key. They used like the machine key.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even take a good look at that.
Unless that's a typo here. Yeah, they're not using gakki no key. They're using like kikai no key.
I mean, I copy and pasted, so unless the original thing made a mistake, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, so it's gourd type string rubbing machine.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, your Stradivarius is a gourd type string rubbing machine. That's exactly what it is.
I gotta know, like, so we don't have it, but what do you think piano would have been? Like large box string rubbing device.
No, actually, I did see piano.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was only 2 kanji. It really wasn't that bad. And
okay. I was just hoping like a conversation could exist where someone's like, so what kind of string rubbing device do you play? Gourd type or box type?
Or magari, kinzokusei magari type.
The answer's like, no. I played the Metal type bent shakuhachi.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yes, yes. There's plenty more of these, but I picked kind of the funniest ones because obviously.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to let's answer the question that we started this off with, because the next one is the one that started all of this for me. So what's the next
final one? Trombone.
Trombone.
Which today is trombone.
Yes. Yeah. So in Japanese nowadays, you would just hear trombone because, katakana, that's what you do in most cases. But no. All right. So in Japanese at the time, somebody said you should say this, which is nukizashi magarigane shinchu rappa. Okay. So nukizashi is pull in out. And then what was the next part?
Magarigane.
Magarigane. Again, bent metal.
Yeah, but they're not even like consistent. It should also be kinzokusei magari, shouldn't it?
I know it's not consistent with the last one, yeah. And then not only like it already has metal, but then it has shinchu, which means brass. So it's a little bit redundant. And then you have rappa, which means trumpet. Usually, like if you just hear trumpet, you would think, yeah, well, a horn, yeah. If you only hear rappa, you think trumpet or horn. You still hear that today.
Yeah, people do say that.
Yeah. So yeah, again, literal description of exactly what this is like. You pull the thing in and out, and it's a bent metal brass horn of some kind.
What kind of instrument do you play? I play the bent metal in and out brass horn.
Yeah. Wow. Exactly. So yeah, that was, this is what that person on social media, a friend of a friend, she wrote this, is like, I just learned that this word exists in Japanese. And then I thought like, oh, I got to find out what other words there are. So while I was researching this, I came across this website, this blog that some guy, I don't think he keeps up with it or she keeps up with it, but the whole point of the blog was to come up with similar translations, like kanji-ish, Japanese-ish translations of normal like katakana words that you hear these days, very forced, very like literal translations. And they just do this for fun. They just come up with these little, translations. And so two that I found, which I thought were funny, was the first one is ATM, and that was Kikai Madoguchi. Yeah, Kikai no Madoguchi. Thank you.
That one doesn't sound that bad, to be honest.
It doesn't. I've come up with a funnier one than this.
Oh, what's yours?
Let's translate. So hang on. So Kikai no Madoguchi would be like the teller window machine.
Yeah,
something like that.
You need automatic, so you need a jido in there.
That's where I was going.
Okay.
So, what was the one that I came up with? It was something like jido teki jido teki na ginko no madoguchi. Something like that. I forgot it. I came up with that like a while ago.
You can get even more specific, like okane, hikidashi.
Okane, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because I mean, if you translate hikidashi madoguchi.
Yeah. So automatic teller machine. You want the teller like bank aspect, the machine in there. You want the automatic as well. So, and then another one that this person came up with was drag and drop. Right. So in the computer, right, you drag and drop a file. This is just an absolute literal translation. Hikizuri otosu. Which
it sounds very literal, like you're dragging some heavy corpse or something, and you just
exactly, literal. Exactly, yeah, literally, like you're dragging a corpse and then you're dropping it off a cliff. Yeah. So this blog seems to have a ton of these. I didn't have time to go into all of these, but this is something that I enjoy doing every once in a while. It makes a lot of people laugh if you come up with a good one. For example, here's a totally original that I sometimes use. Cookie in Japanese. Cookie or cracker, maybe even cracker might be the better translation, but yofu senbei, right? So
I feel like even potato chip could be in there.
Maybe, yeah. Because so senbei is of course like these rice crackers that are usually salty, and so that's why I said maybe cracker is better. And then yofu is like Western style, so a Western style Japanese cracker would be maybe a cracker, right? So every once in a while I think of these. They make me laugh because they're just needlessly complicated and people don't say these things. So but yeah, in World War II people were taking this very seriously. At least some people were. So, so that's how you say trombone in Japanese, guys.
Yeah, so please use only that phrase.
Yeah. So if you're talking, you can tell your friends like, oh, last night, I had dinner. I had some karami iri shirukake gohan, shirukake han. And then I took a quick break. I had a nice tall glass of funshutsu sui, some
Eruption water.
Eruption water. Thank you. And then after I took a break and watched some TV, I practiced my nuki zashi magari gane shinchu rappa. Yeah. So there you go. You can impress all your friends with your obscure World War II, needless, pointlessly long Japanese katakana kinshi prohibited words. But yeah, there's tons more of these. I mean, I'll include links, of course, if anybody wants to go on a deeper dive. But they're funny. They're definitely funny. But that's it for now. Please don't use those unless you're joking around. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you next time.